Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Truth Be Told Minuteman Report. This is Robert Hensley, your Truth Be Told Minuteman, coming to you live from an undisclosed location somewhere in North America. I like to call it the bunker. So this week, going to talk to you a little bit about. We're gonna dig into some religion and history, and this all came about from a little. We don't want to call it an argument. It was a debate. We were having a debate about how the world religions started, specifically Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, how they could all come from the same place and why they're all kind of at war with each other. And so here's the thing, right? If you're looking at those three religions, right? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They all started or came from one, call them a progenitor, right? And that is the Abraham of the Bible, right? Who is also listed in the Quran, and he's talked about in the Hebrew Bible. He is seen by, in the Jewish faith, he's seen as being the person who created or had the covenant with God, right? Created that connection between the people and God. In Christianity, we see him as being the father of Christianity and, starting the nations of, and then in the Muslim faith, in Islam, Abraham is seen as a prophet, a link in the chain between, starting with Adam and going to Muhammad, as being a person who had been spoken to by God. So the similarities in these religions, really, when you break everything down, is that in each of them, there is a notion of sacrifice, the importance of good works, hospitality, peace, justice, the importance of pilgrimage, believing in an afterlife, and this loving God with your heart and soul. For whatever reasons, they have, even though the God is the same, right? Because it is all the same God. Their differences in worship and ritual have led to massive divides, enough so that it has spurned wars for centuries. It's kind of like, if you look in the Hebrew Bible, God is Elohim, right? And for the Islam, it's Allah, right? And when we look at the base of those words, the linguistics of it, right? In both cases, Elohim and Allah both mean the same thing. They translate to the God, not God, but the God. And so they are literally worshiping the same deity. And somehow everyone has just kind of lost track of this, this similarity, this thing where they've all come from the same place, right? And if we go back even further, right, and we really look at the story of Abraham, right? Because Abraham he got his message, his calling from God. He was contacted by God, like late in life. He was 99 years old, right? He was told to leave his homeland and go to the land of Canaan, and that he and God would enter into a covenant, and God would provide for Abraham and his family, and he would have sons and would birth nations, and Abraham at 99 was married to a woman named Sarah, who was like many years his junior, who was barren. And even though he and his wife couldn't have sons, they followed their faith and left. And Sarah did end up having a child at the age of 90. Abraham was 150 at the time. And that started the birth of their nation. But we have to look at Abraham as in the fact that where Abraham came from, right? The original home place, the birthplace of Abraham was the city-state of Ur, U-R, in Mesopotamia, right? We've Sumeria. We've heard of these places, right, between the Tigris and the Euphrates River, right? The cradle of civilization, this delta in Iraq, or in modern day Iraq, I should say. And the Sumerians were the first literate civilization. They were the first civilization to read. They had written language. And so they were polytheistic. It was a polytheistic religion. You may have heard of the Anunnaki, right? Especially if you're into ancient alien theory. But there are some really interesting similarities, parallels that can be drawn between the creation mythology of the Sumerians and the stories of the Anunnaki, and then what gets carried into the book of Genesis in the Bible, right? There's the there's kind of the separation of the firmament. There's the creation of the world. There's the right down to the great Noah's Ark, the Great Flood. The Sumerians called it the deluge. For the Anunnaki, who had created man as slaves, basically, we became too knowledgeable and were starting to grow in number, to the point that we weren't able to be controlled. So the deluge was a way of taking us out and restarting the population. Population control, if you will, which is not dissimilar to the story of Noah and the ark. So yeah, just some stuff to think about, when we hear about, places in the Middle East that the Muslims and the Jews are fighting over land, and Christianity and we've just religious wars are so confusing, especially when we consider that they all came from the same place, that they're all worshiping the same God. There's a really great line from a film, Cold Mountain, which I can't remember the name of the character. Jude Law's character says, that he thinks that God is grown tired of being called down on both sides of an argument. And so, if there was some way to unite under the fact that it was one God, then maybe it wouldn't be so terrible. But the other really interesting thing that I found when I was, because I go into these rabbit holes, this is hours and hours and hours of reading and just kind of forgetting that the world existed. But I was really taken with this idea of how old people got in the Bible. Like, people were living for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. So like for the Sumerians, they talk about people who lived for thousands of years, that there were rulers who ruled for thousands of years. And then, we look and we realize that in the Bible, Adam lives to be 1,000 years old, right? And then his son lives to be like 900 years old. And then his nephew is, 700 years old. And, we talk about Abram, getting to be, 150 years old. His brother or nephew Lot was, like 170. And so I started wondering, how is it that people in the Bible lived so long? And so it turns out that if you kind of look into kind of the story of it all, when God, Elohim, or Allah, cast Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Evil, he cursed the land. He gave them mortality. And it didn't happen just in their lifetime. So it's kind of like we're literally, the lifespan shortens generation by generation by generation by generation, to the point where now people don't live to be 1,000, they live to be 80. Right. So it's so very interesting kind of take on the idea of how religion and kind of got started and where it came from, and what gave birth to the ideals or the ideas that are accepted and held holy today. But just thought that was a really interesting conversation or a debate that we had, and wanted to share with you what I had found on my rabbit hole, that there really isn't, we can't talk about, the Jewish faith having a different God from the Muslims. Islam does not worship a different God from the Christians. They're all worshiping the same deity. The only thing is that they're worshiping that deity differently, right? They all, have their own basis of belief, and the rituals are different, but they're all praying to the same person, or idea, or concept, or thing, or whatever you want to call it. So there you have it. That is our Minuteman Report for today. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Remember, there are 4 opportunities for new content from Truth Be Told. Not just Minuteman Report on Mondays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern, but Tuesdays with La Verdad Se Habla, the Truth Be Told in Spanish with Metaphor. You've got Bonnie Burkert on Wednesdays with Truth Be Told Transformation. And, of course, Tony Sweet on Fridays with the original Truth Be Told, all at the same time. 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 Eastern on those days. And if you want to learn more, you can always go to our website, www.truthbetoldparanormal.com. And if you have any questions or ideas for me, please feel free to reach out, reportminuteman@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. And until next week, please, as always, stay true.